Lily's grandmother sat motionless in the witness chair, her worn red jacket stark against the dull courtroom walls. The lawyer circled her like a predator, ready to destroy her in front of everyone. What he didn't know was that the frail woman he was about to humiliate had survived things that would break most men. And in moments, 3 Marines would burst through those doors to prove it. The lawyer, Davy, turned to Lily's father with mock sympathy dripping from every word. He gestured toward the elderly woman in the red jacket. "Your mother tells these wild stories about military service. You're worried about that, aren't you? It's damaging your daughter." Mark mumbled his response, eyes fixed on the floor, refusing to look at either his daughter or his former mother-in-law. "She's old. She gets things mixed up. She fills Lily's head with nonsense." Velma sat perfectly still. Her weathered hands rested quietly in her lap, blue veins visible beneath thin skin. She watched everything with steady eyes, her face revealing nothing. Davy spun toward the judge. "Your Honor, my client worries about his daughter's well-being. We have this grandmother, surely a nice lady." He waved dismissively toward Velma, who apparently entertains her granddaughter with outrageous tales about being a United States Marine of all things. This shows unstable thinking, not the kind of environment a young girl needs. Judge Harris looked exhausted. The weariness in his face matched the stale air in the room. "Get to your point, Mr. Davy." The lawyer's voice rose dramatically. "The point, Your Honor, is these are dangerous fantasies. Lily argues with her classmates about this. She insists her grandmother was some kind of combat hero. These delusions need to stop. They reveal serious questions about Mrs. Harding's ability to provide proper care." He paused for effect. "With the court's permission, I'd like Mrs. Harding to testify." Tension rippled through the small courtroom. Judge Harris looked at the elderly woman. "Mrs. Harding." Velma rose with deliberate grace that seemed to contradict her age. She walked to the witness stand, her shoes making no sound on the worn floor. That red jacket seemed to glow. As she passed the bailiff, a stocky man in his late 50s with a faded navy tattoo peeking from under his sleeve, he straightened without thinking. He couldn't explain why. Something about the way she carried herself demanded it. She settled into the chair, adjusted the microphone, and waited. "Mrs. Harding," Davy began, moving like a shark sensing blood, "thank you for joining us. Let's settle this. You've been telling your granddaughter that you served in the United States Marine Corps, correct?" "I've told her about my life, yes." Velma's voice was quiet, yet it seemed to fill the silent room. It didn't need volume to command attention. "And this life you describe includes being a Marine?" Davy pressed, smirking. "Ma'am, with respect, that's quite a claim for a woman your age. Things were different back then. Women didn't exactly storm beaches, did they?" A few people in the back snickered. The judge silenced them with a glare. "There are many ways to serve," Velma said evenly, her eyes locked on the lawyer. Of course," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Perhaps you were a clerk, a secretary. Honorable work, certainly, but Lily seems to think you were some kind of commando." More laughter. Lily buried her face in her hands. "I was an officer in the Marine Corps." The words came out simple and solid as stone. Davy's smirk widened. "An officer, my, can you prove this extraordinary claim? Discharge papers, a DD-214. My client's investigation found no pension records, no VA benefits in your name. Strange, don't you think? Paperwork disappears over time," Velma replied, her calm infuriating him. "And I've never asked for anything I wasn't given." "How convenient," Davy sneered. He leaned over the witness box, invading her space. "You see, Mrs. Harding, your stories are harming your granddaughter. You're teaching her to lie, to live in fantasy. My client just wants his daughter living in reality, away from these war stories." He pointed to a small tarnished pin on her red jacket, an eagle, globe, and anchor, the Marine Corps emblem. Time had worn the details smooth. "And what's this? Costume jewelry from a surplus store to sell your story. Nice touch." "Very convincing." Velma's eyes flickered to the pin for just a moment. The lawyer's mocking faded away, replaced by the sound of cold rain hammering a barracks roof at Paris Island in 1977. She saw herself, younger, drenched and mud-streaked, knuckles raw and bleeding. She was pinning an identical gleaming emblem onto another young woman's collar. Private Jensen's exhausted, triumphant face stared back at her. The smell of wet earth and iron determination filled the air. They were part of the first platoon of women to complete the same final phase as the men. That pin wasn't just a symbol. It was a promise kept, a barrier shattered. She refocused on the courtroom, her expression unchanged. "It was a gift," she said softly. "A gift," Davy repeated, tasting victory. "Your Honor, it's obvious what's happening. An elderly woman clinging to fantasies, creating make-believe that harms this child. She can't prove anything. She can't provide stability. She can only provide stories." He continued his attack for what felt like hours. He questioned her memory, her physical ability to care for a child, her finances. He painted her as weak, forgetful, delusional. Through it all, Velma answered with quiet dignity that seemed to enrage him further. She never raised her voice, never broke eye contact. She simply sat there in her red jacket, an island of calm surrounded by manufactured outrage. The bailiff, Rick, watched with growing disgust. He'd spent 20 years in the Navy, most as a master at arms. He knew procedure, he knew people. And something about this woman screamed authenticity, not just her posture, the economy of her movements, the way she surveyed the room without seeming to move her head, the quiet, unshakable confidence radiating from her. Davy saw a frail old woman. Rick saw a commander. He'd heard her full name during the swearing-in. Velma Rose Harding. It didn't register then, but when Davy mocked that pin, something clicked. He'd seen pins like that before, worn smooth by decades of care. The way she absorbed the insults wasn't weakness. It was discipline, a kind he hadn't seen in years. While Davy grandstanded about the dangers of elderly fantasy, Rick made his decision. He caught his partner's eye, gestured he was taking a break, and slipped through the heavy courtroom doors. He moved quickly down the marble hallway, the lawyer's voice still faintly audible behind him. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over his contacts. This was a wild gamble, probably nothing. But if it was something, if she was who he suspected, letting this travesty continue was unthinkable. He found the number for the public affairs office at the nearby Marine Corps recruit depot. The only number he could think of. A young, cheerful Lance Corporal answered. "Public affairs, how can I help you?" "Yeah," Rick said, keeping his voice low. "Rick Stanton, I'm a bailiff at the county courthouse. This'll sound strange, but there's a woman in family court here. Velma Harding claims she's a Marine. The opposing lawyer is destroying her, calling her a liar. I don't know, something about her feels right. She has the bearing. Can you look her up?" "Pause, sir, we can't give out personnel information." I know, Rick said, frustrated. "Look, kid, I'm a Navy vet. Master at arms, retired. My gut is screaming at me. This woman is real and she's being publicly humiliated. Her granddaughter is about to be taken away because this lawyer is painting her as a senile fraud. Her name is Velma Rose Harding, born 1955, I think. Please, just look." The Lance Corporal hesitated. The bailiff's plea, veteran to veteran, struck a chord. "Hold on." Rick heard keyboard clicks. He paced the hallway, polished floors reflecting his anxious steps. Minutes stretched into eternity. Davy was probably delivering the final blow right now. The voice that returned wasn't the cheerful Lance Corporal. It was deeper, harder, laced with urgency that made Rick's hair stand up. "This is Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole. Who am I speaking to?" "Rick Stanton, court bailiff. You said Velma Harding." The Master Gunnery Sergeant asked, voice tight. "Yes." Long gray hair, red jacket. Another pause followed by muffled cursing. "Holy Mother of God." Then directly into the phone. "Mr. Stanton, what courtroom?" "3B Judge Harris." "Keep them there," the voice commanded. "Do whatever you have to. We're on our way." The line went dead. Rick stared at his phone, heart pounding. It wasn't just something. It was something huge. He walked back into the courtroom just as Davy delivered his closing remarks. The air felt thick with impending doom. "And so, Your Honor, for the child's safety and well-being, we request immediate custody change and a court-ordered psychological evaluation for Mrs. Harding to assess the full extent of these delusions." Back in the public affairs office, the Lance Corporal stared wide-eyed at his Master Gunnery Sergeant, who was already striding toward the base commander's office. Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole didn't knock. He opened the door and stood at attention. Colonel Marcus Thorne, a lean man in his late 40s with the hungry look of a career infantry officer, looked up from his paperwork, annoyed. "What is it, Master Guns? Sir, you need to see this." Cole laid a printout on the polished desk. Thorne picked it up, scanning the first few lines. His annoyance evaporated, replaced by disbelief, then comprehension, then cold, hard anger. He read the name first. Harding, Velma R., Colonel, USMC, retired. Then the service history. Officer Candidate School 1976. The Basic School 1977. First female officer assigned as intelligence officer for an infantry battalion. Marine Security Guard Detachment Commander, Beirut 1983. Operations Officer, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, Operation Urgent Fury. Commanded a training battalion at Paris Island. Senior Intelligence Officer for 1st Marine Expeditionary Force during Desert Storm. Then the awards. Legion of Merit. Bronze Star with Combat V Combat Action Ribbon. Meritorious Service Medal with 2 gold stars. Thorne looked at Cole. Beirut. She was at the embassy. She was the detachment commander, sir, Cole said, voice low. She pulled 3 of her Marines out of the rubble herself after the bombing. That's where she got the Bronze Star. Thorne's jaw tightened. He stood, chair scraping back. He looked at the photograph stapled to the file. A young captain with piercing, intelligent eyes stared back. The same eyes now framed by wrinkles and gray hair in a county courtroom. This is Colonel Viper Harding. Thorne asked, the legendary call sign spoken with reverence and shock. Every Marine officer knew the name. She was a ghost, a legend from a different era, one of the first women to break down doors. They studied her tactical decisions from Grenada at the War College. Yes, sir, Cole confirmed. Thorne grabbed his cover. Master Guns, get my vehicle and find the sergeant major now. He looked at the younger female captain working at a desk in the outer office. Captain Jennings, you're with me, sir. You're going to see what a real Marine officer looks like, Thorne said, voice a low growl, and we're going to fix this right now. Back in the courtroom, Judge Harris was about to render his decision. The tension was suffocating. Lily sobbed openly, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt, of pain crossed Velma Harding's stoic face. She reached over and placed a reassuring hand on her granddaughter's knee. Davy stood with arms crossed, smug and satisfied. He'd won. He'd exposed the old woman's fantasy and secured custody for his client, a masterpiece of legal maneuvering. After reviewing the testimony, Judge Harris began, voice heavy with resignation, and in light of the questions raised about home environment stability. The heavy courtroom doors swung open with such force they banged against the stoppers, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Every head turned. Framed in the doorway stood 3 figures in immaculate Marine Corps Service Alpha uniforms. Leading them was a full bird colonel, his chest a riot of colorful ribbons, his gaze sweeping the room with intensity that made the air crackle. Flanking him were a sergeant major whose stern face looked carved from granite and a young, sharp female captain. They moved as one, polished shoes striking the floor in synchronized rhythm that was less walk, more march. They ignored the gallery, ignored the lawyers, focused entirely on the front of the room. The entire courtroom froze in stunned silence. Even the humming lights seemed to cease. Colonel Thorne didn't slow until he reached the bar separating gallery from court. He stopped, eyes finding the judge. Your Honor, he said, voice a crisp, commanding bark utterly alien in this setting. Colonel Marcus Thorne, base commander. I apologize for this interruption, but I've been made aware that a gross injustice is being committed against a decorated officer of the United States Marine Corps. Davy sputtered. Your Honor, this is outrageous. I demand. Thorne's head snapped toward him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Counselor, you will be silent. Davy's mouth snapped shut as if physically forced. Thorne's gaze moved to the witness stand where Velma Harding sat, expression one of weary surprise. He took 2 more steps forward, stopped directly in front of her, and his back went rigid. He brought his right hand up in a salute so sharp, so precise it seemed to cut the air. Colonel Harding, he said, voice ringing with respect that bordered on reverence. It is an honor, ma'am. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Davy's face went from smug to confused to sheet white in 3 seconds. Lily's father looked like he might be sick. Lily stared, tear-filled eyes wide with wonder. Velma looked at the colonel saluting her. A slow, sad smile touched her lips. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, the gesture of a commander accepting respect from a subordinate. Thorne held the salute a moment longer before dropping it. He turned to the judge, who was leaning over his bench, mouth slightly agape. "Your Honor," Thorne began, voice now a measured, controlled weapon. "The counselor has questioned this woman's fitness, called her delusional, mocked her service. I'm here to set the record straight." He held up the file. "This is Colonel Velma Viper Harding, commissioned in 1976, honor graduate of her class at the basic school. In 1983, while serving as commander of the Marine Security Guard Detachment in Beirut, her post was bombed. She was buried in rubble for 3 hours. After digging herself out, she refused medical attention and spent the next 10 hours searching for her Marines, pulling 3 of them, 2 deceased, from the wreckage with her bare hands. For this, she was awarded the Bronze Star with V for valor." As Thorne spoke, the quiet old woman in the red jacket transformed in their minds. A searing image flashed through Velma's memory. The taste of concrete dust and blood, the crushing weight, the terrifying silence. Then the faint groan of a trapped Marine nearby, the searing pain in her shoulder as she clawed at concrete and rebar. Her only thought: get to her people. The world was smoke and screams and burning diesel. A hell she'd walled off for 40 years, now standing starkly beside the image of a smug lawyer in a cheap suit. The counselor questioned her grasp on reality. Thorne continued, voice dripping with ice. Her reality included running intelligence operations against narco-terrorists in South America, planning reconnaissance missions during the invasion of Grenada, serving as senior intelligence officer for an entire Marine expeditionary force during Operation Desert Storm, where her analysis was credited with saving an entire battalion. He took a step toward Davy, who involuntarily shrank back. "You mock the pin on her jacket. That eagle, globe, and anchor was earned when women had to fight 10 times harder than men just to be seen as equals. It's been polished by the sands of Iraq, stained by the mud of Paris Island, and it bears witness to a career of honor, courage, and commitment that you could not possibly comprehend." The courtroom was utterly silent. The only sound was the quiet rustle of paper as the stenographer tried to keep up, fingers flying across the keys. The young female captain behind Thorne stared at Velma, expression a mixture of awe and hero worship. She was standing in the presence of a living legend, a woman who'd kicked down the doors that allowed her to have a career. Her fitness. Thorne's voice dropped to a near whisper, yet it filled every corner of the room. "This Marine has passed every test this country could throw at her. She's endured hardship and loss that would break lesser men. She's led Marines in combat. She's mentored generations of officers. The only thing she's unfit for, Your Honor, is to be in the presence of men who mistake quiet dignity for weakness and gray hair for senility." He turned back to Velma. "Ma'am, the entire command staff sends its deepest respects and profound apologies that you were ever subjected to this." Judge Harris finally found his voice. He cleared his throat, eyes wide. He looked from the furious colonel to the pale-faced lawyer, then to the quiet, dignified woman in the red jacket. "Colonel Thorne," the judge said, voice full of newfound respect, "the court thanks you. Your information has been illuminating." He glared down at Davy. "Counselor, your motion is denied. In fact, I may consider sanctions for frivolous and abusive litigation." Davy could only nod, his professional life crumbling around him. Judge Harris looked at Velma. "Colonel Harding. Ma'am, custody of your granddaughter is affirmed. This case is dismissed with prejudice." He banged the gavel, the sound a final, definitive crack that broke the spell. Velma finally allowed herself to take a deep breath. She reached for Lily, pulling the girl into a hug. Lily clung to her, no longer crying from sadness but from fierce, overwhelming pride. Colonel Thorne addressed Davy one last time. "You failed to do your homework, counselor. You assumed. You looked at a woman with gray hair and saw a target. You didn't see the iron underneath. The Marine Corps doesn't have an expiration date. Experience doesn't expire with youth. Remember that." Then Velma spoke, voice clear and calm. She wasn't looking at the judge or the lawyers. She was looking at Lily. "The standards are the standards," she said, words a lesson for her granddaughter and a rebuke to everyone else. "They don't change because you're a man or a woman. They don't get easier because you're young or harder because you're old. You either meet them or you don't. That's fairness. The only thing that matters is what you can do." She gently touched the worn pin on her lapel. "This just means I met the standard for a very long time." The fallout was immediate and absolute. The story of what happened in Courtroom 3B spread through the courthouse like wildfire, then through local news, then across military networks. Davy's firm issued a public apology, and he was quietly reassigned to handle wills and estates, his career as a trial lawyer effectively over. The judge ordered mandatory training for all court staff on veteran sensitivity, with special emphasis on not making assumptions based on age or gender. At the Marine Corps base, Colonel Thorne made Velma Harding's file required reading for all junior officers. He invited her to be guest of honor at the next Marine Corps birthday ball, an invitation she graciously accepted. A new mentorship initiative was established, the Harding Program, connecting pioneer women veterans with young female service members just starting their careers. A few weeks later, Velma and Lily were in the commissary on base picking up groceries. It was Saturday and the place bustled with Marines and their families. As they turned down an aisle, they came face to face with a pale, humbled Mr. Davy. He was holding a basket with a single carton of milk. He froze, face flushing with shame. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. "Mrs. Colonel Harding," he stammered. Velma just looked at him, expression neutral. "I wanted to apologize," he said, eyes on the floor. "Sincerely. What I did, the things I said, there's no excuse. I was arrogant and I was wrong. I'm truly, deeply sorry." Velma studied him for a long moment. Lily clutched her grandmother's hand, small face a mask of fierce loyalty. "In my first year at the basic school," Velma said, voice soft, "my instructor told me something I never forgot. He said, never judge the enemy by their appearance, judge them by their capabilities. You looked at me, Mr. Davy, and you saw what you wanted to see. You never bothered to find out what I was capable of." She gave a small, sad smile. "It was a failure of intelligence. A good lawyer, like a good officer, should never suffer from a failure of intelligence. Learn from it." She nodded once, a gesture of dismissal and perhaps forgiveness. She and Lily continued down the aisle, leaving him standing there with his single carton of milk. As they walked out into the bright afternoon sun, Lily looked up at her grandmother, the woman in the simple red jacket who was so much more than anyone ever guessed. "Grandma," she asked, "were you scared in the courtroom?" Velma Harding looked down at her granddaughter, eyes that had seen so much now soft with love. "The courtroom is just a room, sweetheart," she said. "I've been in much scarier rooms. The secret is you just have to remember who you are, no matter what anyone else says." The story of Colonel Velma Harding is a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear their greatness on the outside. It's a testament to the quiet strength and unwavering valor of women who broke barriers and served with distinction long before their contributions were fully recognized. Their legacy isn't just in the battles they fought, but in the standards they set and the lives they shaped. If you were inspired by this story of courage and resilience, please like and share this video to honor our veterans. And subscribe for more stories of the incredible women who have served our nation.